So I always try to get bipartisan support for all my bills. Having been in the minority for the last 8 years, it's the only way you can get anything done. I still think, even though we're in the majority, we want that because, and this is to be very honest, this is always kind of the question. And my view is, if we have an ability to get the bill passed in the Senate, if there's any hope, then we want to get as many Republicans as we can, because that makes it easier for some Republicans in the Senate to say, okay, because if it comes over with just Democratic votes, it's easy for them to say, oh, it's a partisan bill. So my view is, if we have to have some compromises in bills in order to get a good chunk of Republicans, because it's going to help us make it actually pass in the Senate, then it's worth it. If we're never going to get a Republican, if it's a bill with, like, the assault weapons bill, we're never going to get a Republican, then my view is we should pass the bill in the version that's the best version possible, and then hold them accountable in the Senate when they don't pass it. Yeah. So I think it's one of those. I think in the area of this democracy reform, I don't think there are any Republicans that signed on it when it was first introduced. My hope is, we introduced this day one and the government was shut down. This is part of, in my view, the president's strategy. He did not want the new Democratic Congress to have a launch of this transformative democracy reform bill. So what's the best way to make sure they don't? Shut the government down. So he was successful. I think most people don't even know HR 1 was introduced. So I think once the government reopens, we have to relaunch it. Because the only likelihood that we're going to ever get any Republicans on this bill is if they feel the pressure from their own constituents to say, why aren't you on this bill? Tell me why, and put real pressure on folks. So if you have, relatives or friends or colleagues in other states, Congressman Landrieu is obviously a co-sponsor of HR 1, but, talking to them to say, you should call your member of Congress and make sure they understand how important this is to the future of our country, and find out if they're on it. Because the most powerful thing for a member of Congress to hear is a phone call or a letter for people that they represent. Other people, you can always call the speaker. I always feel like the speaker is responsible for the whole Congress, but the individual members are essentially responsible to the people they represent. So right now it is not bipartisan. I'm an optimist. I'm hoping we'll get some of particularly the freshman Republicans that will see the value of this. But my view of it is, this is only going to change when members of Congress understand the political risk of not supporting it. Like when they see that their constituents who, in the national polls, 96% of the American people think the reason Washington doesn't work is because of the corrupting influence of money. So this is the issue. And if members of Congress understand, if you don't support this, you're going to pay a political price, I think that's our only hope. I think that's one thing people can do, is think about folks that in other states.